If you've seen the other parts, you get bragging rights in the comments, but if you haven't, click the I in the corner to do so right now. Otherwise, here's a quick refresher on the rules and score metrics just in case anyone needs them. Also click the join button to become a member.
Welcome to Mario Kart!
You can't get a title screen more iconic than that. You just can't. Despite being considered the crown jewel of Mario Kart for the longest time, revisionists on social media altered the perception of this game to be more like a crown of 9-inch nails. Slippery physics, rubber band AI, generic tracks, janky controls. You would have to be a molting millennial minger to find it good, as the only way to like this game is if you grew up with it, and there's no other way to enjoy it. But I did! And again, is there anyone who would get triggered by me saying that 64 is better than SNES Kart? Honest question. Look, I can never stay mad at Mario Kart 64, no matter how many times it shoryukens me across my upper body. As a follow-up to the original SNES Kart, Mario Kart 64 was put on more advanced hardware, thereby allowing it to ditch the stupid 2-screen overlay in favor of a mini-map. It may have removed the feather of justice, but it introduced other features that would become a staple in this spin-off series. 4-player support, mirror mode, staff ghosts, unlockable alternate title screens, triple shells, the ability to turn off the music, for some reason. In-universe sponsorships, like the sponsor of today's video, my YouTube membership program. You don't really care about that. The real most important feature of this game is depth to its courses. Probably not in terms of track variety, where this game has 3 raceway courses and a whole lot of music recycling, but depth in terms of aspects like hills, towering walls, elevation, and more varied obstacles and environments. Even if it's not the best Mario Kart, it's undeniably one of, if not the most influential, despite what people say. Not much depth to this game. What would you call these vast amounts of changes then? Poorly controlled? Doctor, get an Uber charge on this man because we got a bad taste of skill issue. You say that these controls are bad, but my response is, it's that easy. Don't get me wrong, it's fine if you're having trouble with this game, I'll definitely get into some issues later on, but normalize saying physics instead of controls. Chances are it's more in line with what you're thinking of. But anyways, Mario Kart 64's tracks take as much advantage of its early polygonal 3D graphics as feasibly possible. Big emphasis on feasibly, as some corners needed to be cut given how much was added. You'd think that'd be obvious with the characters and items being comprised of 2D sprites instead of 3D models like everything else, but the multiplayer mode, while still very impressive, had to have its details stripped down in many areas. Sometimes it'd be as much as less background details and a worse frame rate, but others would be more drastic, like how there's straight up no music playing at all if you race with 3 or more players. This is uncanny. I want to go home. Though, there is one course that has its limitations being used to its benefit in a way, but we'll get there when we get there. Otherwise, let me just stretch the screen real quick. As you can see, this funky monkey is letting y'all know that I'm playing this game on the Nintendo Switch Online service, which I know isn't the most ideal thing on the planet, given that they feature things like unfiltered textures and these weird pixels hanging off like a tumor. But it's the best quality I could do for this video. But then again, it's not like anybody's gonna be watching this video anyways, so let me just start yapping about a game that you probably will stop caring about the moment I finish this video. Luigi Raceway is a straightforward course with a nice first course atmosphere. It's just an oval, but it at least has a couple of highlights like the hot air balloon, which can guarantee a blue shell, and the Jumbotron. It's a starter course with a couple of bells and whistles, and that's about it. Though I'll give it props for tilting the screen a bit when you drift on its turns to create the illusion of depth. That's pretty neat. And I also think that Mario Kart 7 and Tour, while don't exactly push it to the more modern mechanics, I still like how they let you drive on the ramps for some boost pads and trick opportunities. Though only Tour offers a real incentive to do so thanks to its combo counter, but otherwise, I'd give this one a 54 out of 100. Nothing amazing, but it does what it needs to do. Moo Moo Farm is nostalgic to me specifically because of the DS version, but hey, I think the original is kinda better. This one has more Monty moles on the inside curves, and when combined with the looser physics, adds a better risk-reward factor to it. They don't latch onto your cart like before, but there's still something to watch out for. Though as mentioned earlier, my nostalgia comes from the DS version, specifically because of this one simple memory. So, There was this one time where I was playing Mario Kart DS with some friends from high school band, and this was the course we were playing on at the time. I was a Shy Guy at the time because this was a quirky thing DS did, where Shy Guy was playable in DS's download play and nowhere else in the game, which makes me wonder why they even modeled him in the first place, but whatever. At first I was doing shockingly poorly, despite being the biggest gamer of the group. Hell, there was even one point where I ended up in last place. But then, on the final lap, I managed to get a bullet bill and took first place at the literal last possible nanosecond, pissing off everybody. I genuinely consider this to be one of my prouder accomplishments. I mean, hey, it was the first time I ever saw those demon eyes. And for that memory alone, 64 out of 100. How fitting. Koopa Troopa Beach, despite sharing a theme from the previous Koopa beaches, is competently designed. It starts around a Koopa statue with 2 paths to pick from, and then you get to these ramps. They're fine at first, if not a bit out of place visually, but eventually they lead you to the iconic waterfall shortcut, which skips a third of the track. Shortcuts back in the day used to be, oh hey, you can use a mushroom and you can cut through this grassy section and take a turn slightly quicker, or just not take a turn at all. I don't really care about those, but 64 is where they started making more intricate shortcuts. And this is the first one I can get excited talking about. It's extremely hard to pull off, but it's an absolute win if you nail it. And the funny thing is, you don't even need a mushroom to pull it off. Sheer skill can take you far. Hell, they even maintained this challenge factor in Mario Kart 7 where I would argue they made it even cooler. You need to use a mushroom off of the first ramp to leap onto a glider ramp that allowed you to glide into the cave and through the waterfall. But since it moves up and down with the tide, which you can also drive through just for another cool bit, you can potentially not need a mushroom, yet still get enough airtime on the glider ramp to make the shortcut. Man, that goes hard. And there's also this one ramp that leads to a boulder with an item box on top that guarantees a blue shell. Or so I'm told. They made it into a simple glide ramp in the 7 version, which is kind of a shame, but I still like how the ramps were utilized here. These ramps are still interesting enough to keep the gameplay engaging. There's a lot I like in this course, so I think an 82 out of 100 seems fair. See? I told y'all I could appreciate a good beach course. Depending on who you ask, Calamari Desert is a course that is loathed by Range Rovers, loved by crabs, or planted in the middle of the road like JoJo's trying to kill vampires. Or demon slayers. It's a novel course with pretty looking sand and a train that you have to stop for, or go for a Hail Mary and blitz past it before it blocks the gate, which can be tight, but super rewarding to pull off. Can I make it? Can I make it? Yeah, baby! Though you can just get a star to go right through it with minimal effort, but I didn't get a star in any of my footage, so meh. It also lets you ride through the tunnel, which doesn't really do much good for you, but you can just do it if you want, and that's pretty funny. I say funny because it was here where I learned that your cart moves faster than the train.
Wow, I'm actually outpacing the train.
And now you know why no one uses steam engines anymore. They removed this tunnel path in the Mario Kart 7 version for some reason, but to compensate, they added these off-track glider ramps that you can use to fly over the train. Pretty good. But it makes a white-knuckled skin change in comparison to what Tour and 8 Deluxe did with this course. Going into the tunnel is now a real part of the track. In Tour, the train no longer hurts you for some reason. In 8 Deluxe, however, the train still hurts you, and it needs you to be wary of it during the second lap. I think this is a really cool upgrade to what is otherwise a serviceable track. Look, I like me some trains. I ride on them every time I go to one of my classes, but it's not enough to make me like this course a whole lot, as most of it is just I sleep like a motorcycle. So yeah, despite how interesting the 8 Deluxe and Tour versions are, the course is still only getting a 58 out of 100 from me. Even for a Mushroom Cup course, it's quite a snoozer. Though, I am surprised that this is the only Wild West-themed desert course Mario Kart has ever had. I feel like there's a lot of potential for one just by taking inspiration from Rayman and the Phantom Show alone. Driving through saloons and cantinas, racing against cowboys on horseback, dashing amidst a western shootout, and there's just so much you could do with this theme. Yet all Calamari Desert ever did was train. One that impedes your race. Riveting. Toad's Turnpike is the series' very first traffic course, a staple that you would see at least one of in every Mario Kart game going forward. This one's just a standard figure 8, but it has some ingenious difficulty creeps to it. To go on a tangent real quick, I don't understand why people hate the idea of racing on 50cc. I feel like a lot of people go into a Mario Kart game, at least in terms of ranking every course, by jumping into 150cc and expecting to get the hang of the physics right away. Maybe I'm getting something wrong, but I rarely see difficulty taken into account most of the time. 50cc is the best possible way to get a feel for the game's control. The speed is slowed down, items appear less frequently, the AI is on an easier difficulty, and even the tracks may have slight alterations to make them easier or less complex, giving you a better feel for them when you graduate to the later classes, like 150cc. And I feel that Toad's Turnpike, at least in this game, is the best example of this. The higher the class, the more cars and trucks you have to avoid. And on mirror mode, the trucks drive in the opposite direction, which is just a brilliant way to reconsider the course instead of exclusively needing to reconsider your muscle memory in the most arbitrary of ways. This means that the challenge isn't just, oh hey, the AI's a little smarter, because sometimes it's just not smart at all. Bowser felt so bad for me, he literally stopped in front of the finish line so I could pass him. I appreciate it, brother. The amount of traffic on the higher difficulties can be pretty hectic, even for me. And I do think that these traffic courses have been done better in following games, but the subtle designs are genuinely interesting enough for me to call it one of my favorite courses in Mario Kart 64, even if using a star to bypass it is underwhelming in comparison to later games where they jump scare the cars and trucks. Anyways, those are all the advantages that the remake has over the original, so let's discuss what it did worse. Why can you fly over the cars? Why is there an anti-gravity section that ignores the traffic entirely? Why are the roads so wide despite having less cars in your way? Why was this chosen as a battle course in vanilla Mario Kart 8? Is what I would ask if those were my problems, but I'm fine with all of them. Except for this course being a battle mode in the Wii U version. You're never gonna see me defending that, like, oof. I went into this wanting to gaslight myself into hating 8's version of Toad's Turnpike on some arbitrary principle, unlike what my channel members expected to see, but I never had a different version of this script where I did say that. But you're not a member with access to perks like these fun emotes, access to the video script, member exclusive content, and more, all for only $2 a month, so you don't know this. The more I played this version of Toad's Turnpike, the more I started to understand its vision and even enjoy it more. I found it to be really fun weaving around the traffic and utilizing the ramp and glider cars to the fullest. The anti-gravity path still isn't the most fun thing in the world, but I do like how it's there if you're tired of dealing with the traffic. And I'd even argue that it expands on the original vision where these pit stop areas that normally hold items are now separate paths that can be used to dodge the traffic at the cost of being just a little bit slower. Wow, it's almost like playing a course on all these difficulties can help you get a better understanding for the course's vision than if you just played it on the hardest difficulty a single time and then never again. I do still prefer the original version because threading the line is more enjoyable to me, most of the time. Don't you dare put me in fourth. Oh, you f***ing... No! No f***ing way! Fake f***ing news! Yeah, if you dislike this course because it's too difficult for like a flower cup course or something, I get it. But as mentioned earlier, this course's alterations for each difficulty are really fun. And I also think that the visuals are more distinct with this orange sunset vibe, as opposed to the more basic skybox in 8. Overall, I'm giving it a 72 out of 100. It is mainly because of the original, but I'm glad that I was able to find value in both versions of the course. Frappe Snowland is a nice winter course that isn't very challenging. I think this one has better style over substance with how it gives the vibe of an open snow course in the middle of winter. As a kid, I always imagined myself frolicking through this track, probably catching a sled and crashing through the snowman myself just because I can. Although I have seen people declare this as one of the worst courses in the game, and I can somewhat empathize with them. Some people believe that the snowman can be too much of an obstacle, and let me play devil's advocate for them real quick. I'd personally blame the game's need to send you too far upwards after something as basic as a red shell, but for something that doesn't move, I can see it being kind of overkill, at least when you compare it to other enemies from later games, and even in this game. Like, take a look at Pokies and many desert levels. They can move, bend, and block your path, and they have spikes on them, so the punishment for hitting them usually makes sense. Penguins can waddle, slide, and march around spires in a cave, yet the worst they do is just spin you out, if the game even decides to consider them a threat whatsoever. And the cars cars from the literal previous track are driving alongside you and are giant moving blocks on a relatively thin highway. Compare these to the snowmen in Frappe Snowland. They don't move, they don't reside in tight spaces, they're not made of any deadly materials, and they aren't even trying to block you outside of maybe this one field. But when you hit one, you go all... And I feel it's even worse in the DS version, where hitting one will make you lose your item. Like, why even? With all of this in mind, I don't blame people for being ticked at Frosty unleashing his divine wrath here of all places. But at the end of the day, he's still just a bumbling snowman. It's really not that hard to weave around all this. Like I said, they don't move, so it's not like they're actively trying to impede on your race. And even if they did, you could always just, drive around the giant snow Mario and avoid them entirely. It may be a longer path, but it's the less risky one, and nothing's stopping you from taking it, thus giving this cute visual functional purpose. And if you can get a feel for the physics, it can actually be kind of fun. Though maybe it's just my experience with this game kicking in. And hey, since I got Alpha Gems watching, I guess I could show off a little. You weren't impressed with the clips I just showed you? Well, then maybe the snowmen aren't that difficult to dodge or something. The other criticism I've seen involves the boundaries, which I just outright don't think is that big of a deal. Sure, it can be too strict and weird at times, like I don't think this cut is that much of a shortcut, but it's not like you have that many opportunities to cut through the snow in general. Honestly, for a game as slippery as this, Frappe Snowland is actually much easier to stay on the main path than most other courses without walls. Contrary to popular belief, this is not an ice track, it's a snow track. There's a difference, Though now that I've addressed those criticisms, I will say that once you get around all that, you have yourself an okay track with not much else to talk about. I like weaving around the snowman pack and just seeing the ice sculptures of all these Mario characters, but that honestly carries my enjoyment of the course. I guess it also has this small ramp, which is weird but kinda cool, at least if it's meant to capture that sledding idea I mentioned earlier. And then there's this ice wall, which is a cozy, if not functionally underwhelming, way to end the track before the bridge. I like the bridge. I think that this track is forgettable in some areas, but very charming visually. 67 out of 100. Cool as the season itself. But hey, no matter what your opinion on this course is, I think we can all agree that they only included this in DS because they were like, oh, looky here, we made sculptures of the Mario characters in Peach Garden, so what if we just... Perfect! Choco Mountain is another short and sweet course in more ways than one. It takes a page from the Choco Island courses, where it's got a chocolatey aesthetic to it. Not something I would want to take a bite out of, but something I would enjoy seeing in something like a Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory exhibit. A real one. I also like its set pieces, such as the cave, the falling boulders, and the last 3 bumps at the end. And there's also the music, which is my favorite in the game, and one of my favorite tunes in the entire Mario Kart series. Choco Mountain is beautiful and perfect. It is without flaw. No! Whoa! Okay! What the? I tried. No! I got 4th because of that! Okay, yeah, this course is jank as all hell. Alright, you got me. This is honestly one of, if not the most broken course in this series. I hear Weather Report's been cataloging a ton of exploits in the tool-assisted department. This is a blessing and a curse, but the blessing is only if you're a speedrunner who gains long-term dopamine rushes from tearing this course apart. But if you're like me and you lack skill, the jank in this course can hinder your enjoyment of it. But you know what? Not only do the DS, Tour, and 8 Deluxe remakes help it stand on its own, along with the Mario Kart World remake, apparently. Hey, I'm not complaining, because this course has one of the most special places in my heart out of any courses, and that's exclusively because of the music. Hey, look, I am not one to say that a course is good just because of the vibes. I'm usually against that rhetoric. But remember when I said that this was arguably my favorite theme in the series, or at least among them? Well, as a kid who grew up with both 64 and DS, though the former was at my godparents' house because they had an N64, I raced on Choco Mountain the most solely to listen to the music. This managed to get the attention of my godfather, who just randomly wrote me a song on his guitar about a puppy who had to learn to grow into a more mature dog after an epic mountain journey, using Choco Mountain's theme as a bass. He didn't do a good job replicating it at all, but hey, I never minded. Heart was in the right place. My godfather was a real one for that, as it was honestly more attention given to my video game hobby than what my parents gave me during the time. So because of that, even if there are objectively better courses in this game, I can't bring myself to rank it any lower than an 80 out of 100. And for the record, I was also enamored by the train from Calamari Desert as a kid, but now I just think the course is kinda average. And there are other courses that I absolutely loved as a kid, but ended up not enjoying as much as I used to. But this is probably the one exception for me, and to be fair, the broken nature of this course coupled with the hillbilly music is an experience you can never replicate ever. Though that's also probably why it won't be any higher than the score I gave it, given that it's heavily based on vibes and personal nostalgia, but I digress. Either way, Mario Raceway Shore's Brimstone won't be surpassing it. This is a serviceable stadium track with some alright turns, but it's also the shortest circuit course in the game, and the second shortest overall behind Moo Moo Farms. Also, I low-key had the biggest culture shock when I realized that they made it much harder to dash around the mushroom for a quick cut like you can in MK Wii.
Oh, you can't go through the mushroom like in Wii? That's cringe.
Sure, you can still cut through the sand, I guess. And I like doing that with or without mushrooms. But it's not enough for me. I like how Wii lets you do tricks off the pipe just because you can, and for that, I think this is a lot better on Wii, even if it's still worse than most of the other courses in that game. Because the original, despite the decent layout, is just too short for me to call it truly good, especially since it doesn't flex its 3D graphics in any interesting way. I felt that this was a really poor choice to end off the Flower Cup. I think swapping this course with Frappe Snowland would have been better. I guess it works fine as a finale to Wii's Shell Cup, even if it would have made more sense to be the first track there. But, well. When taking both versions into account, I'd say it's a 58 out of 100, being a slightly better version of Luigi Raceway since I like the turns and cuts better than Luigi's course not having any of them. Alright, braggers, I've finally seen the Addams Family, which means that I am properly prepared for full disclosure now. Wario Stadium is a course that I used to like watching other people race on. Specifically seeing my brothers attempt that one shortcut at the beginning and fail miserably at it every time, despite the fact that it's really not that hard of a shortcut. Despite the fact that it's really not that hard of a... Despite the fact that it's really not that hard... Despite the fact that over the years, I've been seeing a lot more distaste towards this course, with many calling it the worst course in the game by quite a big margin, and even a brave few souls calling it the worst course in the franchise. But I don't think people have gone into why it's the worst course in the game, at least not in the ways I've seen. What the fuck? Like, there are people who say that the default circuit theme is unfitting for this course, and then they go on to say that something like Moo Moo Farms or Choco Mountain would have fit this course better. All that criticism's already been debunked. This is like the most unfitting thing in the history of unfitting things. Yes, the circuit theme is a lazy rehash, but I think it still fits the course fine enough. Like, this is a stadium track, and the circuit theme fits raceways and raceway stadiums. Meanwhile, Moo Moo Farm is a country theme, and Choco Mountain is a mountain folk theme. Like, at what point in the history of this infinite multiverse have either one of those genres fit an extreme sports event or motif, despite the fact that no, they haven't? And yes, I've seen every single timeline in this infinite multiverse, and every timeline, except this one, agrees with me on how unfitting it is. Especially in the ones where Nintendo made that decision for the game, and it was unanimously panned as an unfitting music choice. So why is this criticism a thing in this timeline and nowhere else? This is the equivalent of saying that Catch and Throw from the best Final Fantasy spin-off game, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles The Crystal Bearers, would fit perfectly on a course like Bowser's Castle. Wait, hang on, what if I... Yeah, this fits infinitely better than Moo Moo Farms or Choco Mountain themes ever will because it at least has a guitar and a rock and roll edge to it. And I've also seen people criticize this big jump for screwing you over completely if you mess it up, despite the fact that it's really not that hard of a jump to cross. I mean, sure, if someone planted a banana or fake item box, or if you got hit by a shell before crossing the jump, it can be a big deal. But I swear, every single person who makes this criticism unironically shows a clip of another person just like going out of their way to fall off the course. And I'm all like, are you sure you couldn't have picked better footage? And if you still think it's a big deal, then I'd like to introduce you to literally every other gap jump in this game. And if the item is really that big of a deal, then just like, don't get hit. Idiot. I think that the real biggest problem with this course involves something a little deeper than normal, as this goes into the most jarring mechanic I noticed when revisiting this game. Drifting. Drifting in this game felt very awkward in comparison to every other Mario Kart game. Even with SNES Kart, while it was definitely a harder game for me to get used to, it still felt like it had better drifting at points. And that's because in other games, if you're at a jump and you hold the drift buttons while in the air, the game will let you start a drift once you land. And in games with bunny hops, you can preemptively hop and then steer left or right to start a drift before you land. Meanwhile, in 64, neither one of those mechanics are featured. If you're at a jump, you have to wait until you land before you can start a drift. And even if you hop, you'll only be allowed to start a drift if you are already turning in that direction. And on top of that, this game gives you virtually no real control over your aerial momentum, unlike in every other Mario Kart game where you can get some noticeable, if not stiff, control, like leaning backward or forward to adjust the timing and positioning of when you land, or how if you move the joystick after a jump, it will actually let you change the direction in midair. 64 doesn't let you do any of that. Hell, sometimes it'll turn you even further into a direction you were holding, even if you let go of the control stick, or even if you turn the joystick the other way before a jump. Not helped by how fast your turning velocity is in this game. Don't get me wrong, I actually got used to the slippery physics pretty quickly, both as a kid and as an adult revisiting this game after nearly a decade of not having played it. But I'm not sure if other people would have this ease. So when I hear somebody saying that this game is hard to control or that it's janky, I reckon that these two factors are what's catching them off guard the most. While this issue can happen in other tracks, Wario Stadium is the one that exposes the game's overly sun-baked white hairs more than any other layer. All of those bumps and ramps in the road really play with your drifting and turns. Look at this amount of overcorrection I have to keep doing just to avoid hitting a wall. It's not a fun way to race. I mean, I guess you could say this is an adequate challenge given that it's the first course in the Star Cup, where it's reasonably supposed to start to get a little trickier. Except it isn't, because the roads are simply too wide most of the time, so it's more annoying than difficult, which is the lamest and fakest genre of challenge. Lest we forget that this course is the second longest in the game at over 1,500 meters, and one of 4 courses to surpass 1,000. And the thing is, all 3 of those have at least one thing in them to not feel as stale. Meanwhile, this course is just a reminder that you picked Wario Stadium, a flat arena with sand briskly dumped everywhere. Yes, that's the lore behind this course. It's a sandy pit with zits, pimples, and rashes to poorly disguise the fact that it's a boring course with turns that gaslight you into thinking they're more enticing than they actually are. Complete with my beloved repetitive visuals. Okay, I guess you could say it's pretty in character for Wario to slap his face and name over the course for no reason. But at the same time, worst course in the game for sure, at a 33 out of 100. As you can tell, I don't think it's the literal worst course in the series, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't closer to that spot than you might think once we take the full ranking into account. No surprise to see that it's the only course from this game that never got to return. Is what I would say if it weren't for the fact that apparently Mario Kart World is bringing it back. And yes, I've seen the footage. It's specifically the N64 version. As of recording, the game's not out yet, so I have no idea what to expect, but I already like the glow up it has, feeling more like a real extreme sports stadium instead of something that Wario just haphazardly dumped all over the place. Fingers crossed that it's a good remake. Alright, now we can finally move on to Sherbetland. Yes, it's pronounced Sherbet, not Sherbert. There is no second R in Mario Cat. This course has open spaces and penguins, which you'd think would be a challenge. And to the game's credit, these two do have good placements given that they're standing just around the edges of the cave entrance, and therefore their slides force you to consider them at all times. But the second pair doesn't, and the open spaces feel a little too open. These sections are more boring than anything else. But once we get into the cave, things start to get a little more interesting, for better and for worse. I really like the idea of the inner path being harder to drift around, but this is another instance of the course design conflicting with the physics. Taking the inner path is pretty straightforward at first, but then there's this big wall sticking out just before the third ice pillar. If you start turning there, you have to make an extremely sharp turn to stay on the inner path. But guess what? There's a fourth ice pillar that's off screen from your perspective, and the slippery physics mean that it's virtually impossible to make that turn, especially if you bump into the wall. So why not just go on the outer path at that point? Because it's a slower path, and that's the problem with this section. It unintentionally punishes you for sticking with the harder and faster path because of how it's structured. For a section which you're meant to make decisions on which side of the ice pillars to take, this is kind of frustrating. And there's also this big rock where you can go through an inner path, which is a decently nice thing you can do to get an item box that you can already get on the normal path, with no changes in the item box parameters for any risk-reward possibilities, and are also much easier to get in general. Like way easier. And as if the original wasn't bad enough, I don't even like this course in Wii. Is it better? Perhaps. The inner path within the cave is much easier to take thanks to the game's tighter steering, and the outer path has a dash panel, and the path behind a rock leads to a ramp. But as a cost, a couple of the turns at the beginning feel way too tight even with an inside drifting bike. This is just adding difficulty in places where it doesn't belong.
Oh.
You know, it's kind of weird how I dislike this course, yet I kind of like Frappe Snowland, but I don't know, I just think its cozy atmosphere and music works better for me than it does in Sherbetland. Oh boy! Oh boy! Okay, that's not fun. No! No! And I missed the item box. Oh, cringe. Oh, f*** off! Actually, f*** off! Oh yeah, I think I'm justified in the score I'm gonna give it. 45 out of 100. And seriously, that last clip was a total load of bollocks. Call me Edelgard because I did nothing right. Raceway is the best circuit course in this game, bar none. Lots of tight and tricky turns, lots of elevation changes, and even a big jump that features the rare double poop! I really like how you have to think about going in the grass, as most of the sections around the beginning and end of the finish line dip into the water, which means that you'll fall in if you stay in there for too long. A nice challenge in the Star Cup, but thankfully it's not so unfair that dipping into it will instantly punish you. You're still able to fight your way out. And there's even this one random path where you can go into the castle, which does nothing and screws you over, but you can just do it if you want to. But yeah, I'm really not that surprised they removed it in Mario Kart 8. And to be fair, it got a really interesting glow up. The big jump is now glider section, where you get to fly across all these hot air balloons with contestants cheering you on, getting a really nice view of the castle. But at a cost, most of the turns are much easier to pull off. Maybe it's because of the game's tighter steering, but I also can't help but feel like they widened the road a little bit. I don't know, am I the only one who feels like the road is wider here? Maybe. A couple things done better, a couple things done worse, to a point where I ultimately prefer the original. No, it's not because of the Easter egg. I mean, I guess it's pretty cool for like a minute. It's the fun challenge from the constant turns and random dips in the elevation. Flying across the hot air balloons after the big jump can be awesome, but to me, it just made way more sense to make it a big jump. Like, you're going up this large ramp and building up a ton of speed with all the dash panels so that you can launch yourself to the other side of the course. That's just a much more exciting feature to me, especially with how the camera zooms out so that you can aim your trajectory and land in the right spot. Meanwhile, with the remake, the glider section makes it feel like it's building up the speed for you instead of requiring you to prepare yourself. While this is a minor thing, especially since I still admire the hot air balloon visuals generally, I do want to use this moment to prepare you for when I go into further detail about how glider sections added to other retro courses actually hindered the original version, or at least take away why I liked a specific part of a course. Nonetheless, this is a fair and balanced remake for sure, just like the score I'm giving the original, 85 out of 100. Bowser's Castle in this game is the second most difficult course behind a Special Cup course that I'll get into in a bit. It starts off with a Bowser statue that breathes fire, which, fun fact, doesn't actually have a hitbox. Like, here, I'm driving towards it and I didn't get hit. And now I'm gonna get hit by it again? Yeah, I'm just resisting my own flame. Weird. And then you go into the castle and have to deal with these thwomps that go out of their way to mess you up. Seriously, even now, these homing thwomps are such a nuisance, which I mean in the best way. And it feels rewarding when you learn how to bamboozle the AI, and it's especially cathartic to nab a star and break them into pieces. Plus, you have the sliding thwomps laughing at you in what I've realized is in a slower, lower-pitched version of Wario's laugh from this game. You have these haunted hallways with gloomy red and chartreuse lighting, and the spiral climb up to the rooftop, which isn't that fun to me, where you're forced to weave around all of these spires. It goes all the way with this atmosphere and feels less like a castle and more like a haunted cathedral. And this is heavily boosted by the music consisting of eerie choir sounds and whole notes. Even if there are better Bowser's Castle levels in later games, none of them have been able to capture the atmosphere of this one. Not even Mario Kart Wii when it brought this course back. The engaging layout is still intact, but the homing thwomps are way easier to dodge, and its usage of bloom lighting makes the scenery way too shiny. Though I will give shoutouts to the last stretch. The ramp requires you to think, since now there are lava pillars in the way, and you can even ride across the rail to skip the spires. I could nail this all the time as a kid, but nowadays... Still got it. Also, we need to talk about Marty. Anytime I turn this game on, I always remember to drive up to a cell and say 3 little words. Fuck you, fascist! That thwomp is a mentally unstable terrorist with more war crimes than anything that anyone ever did in between the time periods of both world wars combined. And yet you want to gaslight yourselves into thinking that they are good people who did nothing wrong? Yeah, and you know who else did nothing wrong? Edelgard, a fucking war criminal! And Marty is way worse than her in every conceivable way. Like, did you not see that this is a part of Marty's plan? Have you not heard the things he said about how he'll make basic human rights impossible to afford for anyone outside of the 1%? Actually, not even then! Anyone outside of the 0.5%! Has everyone forgotten his negative opinions on the LGBTQIA+ community and how he's openly spouted more slurs towards both people of color and people of different sexualities in a single minute than the average grifting bigot on YouTube uses in a year? Did nobody remember the misogynistic things he said about Dolly Parton? Or the time when he doubled down on all of these during his trial? What, you don't seem to care about that stuff? Well, what if I told you that this guy, Marty, was responsible for everything wrong with SNES Bowser Castle 2? Along with this row of thwomps right here in SNES Bowser Castle 3. The only thing that prevented this course from making it to the Supreme tier. Did you know that all of this was his doing? I even got this suspicion when playing SNES Kart for the first time.
Oh, is this why Marty got locked up?
But then after doing some research and receiving notes from an anonymous source, it all makes sense to me. That Marty is a fucking menace, and he needs to be rightfully blacklisted from society. And of course he'd have a blue check mark and no pronouns. You say hashtag free Marty? More like hashtag keep Marty locked away forever. He didn't mean a damn thing to anyone regardless, so he should rot in that prison cell where he belongs until the end of eternity, where he deserved to get sent to the bottom of the boiler room of hell on frame 1. Otherwise, this is one of my favorite courses in the game. 86 out of 100. It's very, very good. Now entering the Special Cup with a very nifty new logo. Definitely improvement over SNES Kart, where it was just mushroom, star, flower. Oh, I fucked up. DK Jungle Parkway rules. I'm just gonna put it out there. For being the first Donkey Kong course, I think it still holds up incredibly well. Jungle.wav music notwithstanding.
Wait. Oh man, that's like the best part.
It has a big jump where you can adjust your trajectory for a subtle shortcut, assuming you don't overshoot yourself in the wheels. All the way! Ah! A boat that makes this feel like a fun jungle safari tour that you can also clip through, okay. A narrow bridge, which is a lot more engaging than you'd think once you start leaving items on it. And a cave where you can climb up if you're fast enough. In theory, you can climb it at any part of the hill without a mushroom, but the risk and reward are bigger at some parts than others. The steeper your incline, the more speed you need, but the faster you'll reach the finish line. It's a skill gap in the form of a shortcut. That's incredible! Though I don't think it's possible to pull off without a mushroom on 50cc, but eh. And other times when you go too far off course, you're pelted with clumps of hard yellow poop, I guess. That's just the YouTube comment section for you. And while it can feel annoying at times, not only are there virtually no instances where you can go in the grass and even less to cut through it at any point, but I feel that the road and turns are wide enough to where you can avoid most of it, but not too wide to a point where it feels like a nothing feature. I've also heard people moderately criticize the big jump for taking you to a screeching halt when you land, and while I get where it's coming from, at the same time, with a turn this abrupt and movement this slick, I feels for the best. Although, pro tip, if you're ever knocked out or spun out in this game, mash the A button during your crash and you should get your speed back the moment you start moving again. It even works for heavier racers, albeit you'll probably have to mash more, but still, it's such a goated strategy and that's why I really like this game. But despite how much I admire this track in 64, I'll fully admit that Mario Kart Wii made it worse, Orange River notwithstanding. While the big jump no longer takes you to a screeching halt and the off-road punishment was removed, the shortcut now requires a mushroom at all times, the turns are less exciting due to the game's steering, the music arrangement is the near exact same for some reason. It's the only course in the game that doesn't let you do any tricks aside from SNES Mario Circuit 3, and truth be told, this big jump really should have been a regular ramp. There was no reason not to make it so. It's still fine, I guess, but when comparing it to its original, it could have been more interesting given that it's a Leaf Cup track, which for those who have forgotten, is an unlockable cup. But thankfully, the original takes priority, and when you look at its map, it still doesn't look like it's anything amazing, but for how many opportunities you have to take advantage of its physics, along with the fun visuals and atmosphere, I think that's more than enough of a reason to justify it being the start of the Special Cup and to receive an 89 out of 100 from me. I'm aware that it's only from me, but I am me after all. So, remember when I said that there was a course that took advantage of the N64's limitations? And remember when I said there was a course that I felt was harder than Bowser's Castle? Well, here we are with my hot take of the night. I believe that Yoshi Valley is the most difficult course in the game, and a part of that is for the reason I'll be going into. Despite still being around the average length of courses in this game, it feels like the biggest one thanks to its alternate paths. It legit feels like a maze, especially with the scorecards being removed from the course and only this course. Sure, you can always look at the map and take a guess as to what rank you're in, but you still don't know who's ahead of you, which means that your second place rival could either be ahead or behind and you have no way of knowing. And as for the paths themselves, while some are better than others, the quicker paths are much more narrow and trickier to drive across, while the slower ones are wider, have railings, and less enemies to avoid. Like, look at me slowing down when taking the shorter path. You don't need to, but given the chaos an average Mario Kart game has, you feel like you have to. Especially since, again, you have no way of knowing what rank you're in unless you look at the map in the corner of the screen and figure it out. I think that the only issue I have is that the second fastest path has way too many porcupines. Like, seriously, look at this and tell me that you'd be able to drive through that without getting hit. But I still take it over how my boy was massacred in Mario Kart 8 because they have that one path that's strictly better than the others and has no risk to take. Like, you're telling me you couldn't have given this bridge at least one more swervy turn or add another Goomba before it to make it feel like you have to put effort into taking it?
All right, I want to show you guys something really funny and really sad. So, you have this cannon back here. You go all the way around it. You think get you ahead, right? But guess where it leads you? Right to the front of the bridge. Who thought that was a good idea?
Plus, they randomly felt like removing the porcupine enemies, which, fun fact, have not been seen again in any other Mario game. Not even just any other Mario Kart game. I mean, this is the only game in the entire Mario franchise that they've ever appeared in, which I think is kind of weird. And on top of that, I kind of prefer the reddish hue the cannon used to have as opposed to it being brown. And then you get to the Yoshi egg, which can be tough to drive past with that narrow bridge. It's an awkward but amusing obstacle. Even if the last grass patch is basic, that's kind of the charm to me. The ending encapsulates that feeling you get when you've cleared a pencil maze or walked your way through the end of a corn maze. Probably the latter because it's a much more apt comparison with its hillbilly music and Southern Canyon vibe. That will never fit Wario Stadium in any possible timeline, you blithering pawn. Because of the challenging course, I personally don't care about Lakitu taking his sweet-ass time to pick you back up. Like, it's a Special Cup course. Why wouldn't it be difficult? Though I will concede on the unfairly large Yoshi egg with the narrow bridge, it can be really daunting at times, especially for people who didn't grow up with this game like I did. Like, I find this funny, but only when it's happening to other people. Despite the more varied visuals and tighter steering, its remake leaves a lot to be desired. Basically, this course is what the 8 Toads Turnpike haters think happened to 8 Toads Turnpike. As nifty as all this stuff is, it doesn't need a cannon, a mine, or any of these overpriced dressings. Putting meat in your salad defeats the entire purpose of having a salad in the first place, and anyone who tries to give this vegetarian a salad like that is gonna get their ratings docked before I clock them in the face to embrace this 79 out of 100. I only ever asked for a plain house salad with a little kick to it, thank you very much. Banshee Boardwalk is an odd one to talk about. While nobody's a huge fan of this course, nobody calls it among the worst of the worst in any of its appearances. Not even the people who say it's outright bad. On one end, the atmosphere rules over the land of Peak, albeit by utilizing Fear and Deadman. The dark sky, the minimal lighting from the lanterns, the random haunted house setting that welcomes the racers with the owner's blood, the random big drop after the trickiest turn, and the boos that try to block your vision of what's ahead. Even if I think Bowser's Castle has better lighting and atmosphere, Banshee Boardwalk isn't trying to be like that. It's going for more of a caliginous and unsettling feeling, like there's something lurking around the corner, but you can't quite tell if it's a threat yet. Even the music does a phenomenal job at maintaining this feeling, especially with the course's original vision that I'll be getting into in a minute. These are all things that I feel were neutered in the DS version. While the giant Cheep Cheep looks like it wants to eat you this time, they made the lighting brighter, the water a lighter shade of blue instead of almost looking black, and the boos being the same PNGs of the boo from the item, which was also the exact same effect they used in one of its Nitro courses that you'd be racing on much earlier, given that this Lightning Cup course isn't a cup that you'd have to unlock before racing on for the first time. I prefer how they looked in the original, where they were not only larger, but they were also animated, creating the illusion that they're closer to the screen. But on the other end, the actual boardwalk itself was never too special. I guess it's narrow enough to keep an adequate challenge in some areas, and the path ahead has a couple jagged turns with an inconsistent amount of guardrails to keep you on your toes. Plus, the building has a container of bats that push you back, even if they don't hurt you, and you're forced to take 3 sharp turns in a row because the other side has an open floorboard that you'll fall into if you aren't paying attention to the arrows. The building is definitely the best part of the course to me because of its engaging, albeit telegraphed turns before going to some basic straightaways. Are the turns that complicated? No. But the bats pushing you away makes it feel like it's fighting you, and you can never tell if the turn is tough as nails or as dull as a dull nail. And then you get out of the ending, and while the long guarded straightaway is lame, I can sort of give it the Yoshi Valley excuse where it's meant to capture the feeling of having that unsettling feeling removed. The lights are intentionally brighter, making the goal easier to see. Even if the layout itself isn't super interesting, the vibes and visuals are incredibly strong, making this a course that I think is really fascinating. For a Flower Cup course, or maybe an early Star Cup course. What the hell is this doing as the penultimate course of the game, let alone the Special Cup? Even if the boardwalk is narrow, this course is not challenging enough to justify being here. Like, remember Jungle Parkway's skill gap of a shortcut or everything to do with Yoshi Valley? Better yet, Bowser's Castle was right there, man! You're telling me that course wasn't as good of a penultimate trial? Be real. This score would have been a lot higher if it was in another cup. But alas, as much as I adore the visual style and its early 3D game feel, the best I can give it is a 66 out of 100. And on top of that, I agree that Banshee Boardwalk is quite an odd choice. I get why they couldn't properly translate the Japanese name Hyudoro Ike. For those who don't know, Hyudoro is a play on the Japanese onomatopoeia, Hyudorodoro, which is basically the Japanese equivalent of ooh. Even the music of this course is trying to emulate that sound effect as if this was a kabuki piece or something. I know a lot of people don't like the music, but speaking as someone who studied world music, I really like it. Regardless, I cannot imagine the English language having an applicable term for this, but I think that the other regions picked much better names. The German name is Spukpfad, or Spooky Path. The Spanish name is Muelle Embrujado, or Haunted Pier. And then there's my personal favorite, the French name is Ponton Lugubre, or Lugubrious Pontoon. Ooh, using big words, aren't we, Nintendo of France? All of these names are better than Banshee Boardwalk because, as SpongeBob once said,
a banshee screams like this.
And as you can tell, there's no screaming at any point in this course, barring moments like when your character's getting excited over using an item. Anyways, this has no impact on my opinion of this course, but I still thought it was interesting to talk about. And now we have the return of Rainbow Road, a course that was unanimously loved back then. It was pretty much the equivalent of what the Rainbow Roads from Wii and 7 are considered nowadays. Its visuals, its vibes, and music were untapped. And then you had the characters' faces gleaming in space as if they were fireworks, even though they're pretty much just neon lights painted by Microsoft. It's also the longest course in the game, if not the series, at 2,000 meters in length, with chain chomps trucking through the road at very low intervals, and are also very easy to see coming and pose no real threat to you, given that the whole road is blocked off by guardrails, thus giving no real way for you to fall off, which means that the devs completely overcorrected the difficulty of the older Rainbow Road for what I can only assume to be no reason. But hey, maybe it's supposed to feel like a cathartic finish where you've just cleared a tough gauntlet of some of the hardest and most intimidating courses in the game. But Banshee Boardwalk was really easy, and as much as I enjoy Jungle Parkway, I wouldn't exactly call it super challenging, and okay, I can't just sigh away from my nostalgia this time. Recent years have made people fall off of this course. Ironic, I know, but the future games would give us much more enticing Rainbow Roads with more unique visuals and more challenging layouts and set pieces. It's even gotten to a point where people have been dropping the hot take that this course is actually bad. And look, I'm not gonna force myself to say that those people are wrong, but I need to force myself to say that those people are right. You have no idea how much this hurts. Rainbow Road in this game is one of, if not the easiest course in all of Mario Kart. At least in regards to this game. A Rainbow Road being easy. Those words should be arch enemies with decades of baggage, as was the case in SNES Kart and every other Mario Kart game. Meanwhile, in 64, the only thing you need to watch out for is the occasional chain chomp, but as I said, they're way too easy to notice. And there's also the Ultra shortcut, which, while it's satisfying to pull off, it's not that interesting or even that difficult in certain situations. Plus, most other tracks, especially in this game, have more mechanically intriguing shortcuts and alternate paths that feel more built in. And Rainbow Roads isn't all that special. Like, you jump off of a big jump that you're already able to jump off normally. Like, what's so special about that? Not to mention that without the shortcut, it's 2 minutes per lap. Jeez! Reminder that that's 1,000 meters per minute. 1,000 meters of virtually nothing happening. And no, I don't buy that endurance test theory as a valid way of enjoying it. Wait, hang on. You're saying that the fun of this is to see how long you can hold the A button without getting bored? Wow, that's definitely not the stupidest defense I've heard in the history of stupid defenses I've heard. That only makes it this game's equivalent of style over substance. And even then, is it really that pretty nowadays? I'd argue that future Rainbow Roads have more riveting visuals and design. I mean, yeah. New game with prettier graphics is prettier graphics than old game. And Bao has a laser cannon. We all know this. We've been known. But people are acting like the visuals are still interesting today. Ah yes, basic space background with Microsoft Paint portraits of Mario character heads. Background design is my passion. Hell, I'd argue that Toad's Turnpike looked prettier than this with its orange skybox. This is just a slightly updated version of SNES Kart's background at best. Absolutely dull course, 39 out of 100. This could very well easily be my least favorite course in the game, if it weren't for one last stroke of a divine intervention. Its remake from 8 Deluxe is one of the most brilliant remakes any track has gotten in any game. Possibly even the best remake of the original course lineup, if not all courses, including the ones in the Booster Pass. I guess it's still one of the easier Rainbow Roads in the game. It at least maintained the pretty visuals and went all in with the celebration of Mario Kart that the original so clearly wanted to be. Not only did they bring back the fireworks, but it also got a train that throws coins, anti-gravity sections, a beautiful city at night below the road, and a finale with a glider section as it lets you know this is Mario Kart, and you made a damn good decision to play this course. Not to mention that it's actually possible to fall off. Is the course a little too short? Sure, I guess so. But no, I don't think that's because it's a single lap course cut off into 3 sections. If anything, it's for the best that they made that decision. 2,000 meters! I just feel that adding an extra 5 or 8 seconds or something would have come a long way. But still, I think this is a great remake. But the original Rainbow Road from Mario Kart 64 is undeniably my least favorite Rainbow Road in this series. And yes, I know what's coming soon, and I still stand by this. Mario Mario Kart 64 is what I like to describe as an old dog. It's never gonna keep up with the younger pups, but at the end of the day, it's friendly, it's inviting, it's calmer, and lower energy has a quaint feel to it, you know? And for being the first time I played this game in over a decade, I'm so happy to say that even with Janky Kang streaking its scat in the most random places, I'm still able to enjoy it just like I used to. When it came to finding the best course in SNES Kart, it was honestly kinda tough since I didn't have that much experience with it, so my best bet was to assume that the best courses were the ones that worked with its mechanics. All 5 of them. But with 64, it became much easier for me to figure it out since I've played it several times before. Each course wanted to flex its early capabilities through varied visuals, gimmicks, and hazards. It has been done poorly, like with Wario Stadium and Rainbow Road, which are big for the sake of being big and not much else, and the former especially having no real identity of its own. Though the visual aspects would become interesting in other courses, whether it's smaller things like subtle camera movements or a nifty screen visual, set pieces like tunnels and caves, or larger obstacles like cars or thwomps. These 3 courses right here may just be decent at best and worst, but I still remember them very fondly because of how well they capture the early visuals, like with Frappe Snowland's cold yet comfy skybox in Winter Wonderland locale, or Banshee Boardwalk being a literal uncanny valley with its creepy set pieces, unique music, and pitch black lighting. Though I think that this game's courses are better when the gameplay works with its early 3D style as well. Moments like Toad's Turnpike adjustments to the course depending on the class, Yoshi Valley pushing the N64 further than even it expected to, all work wonders to construct courses that aren't just memorable but also pretty fun. But the moment they start feeling intentional is the moment they really start to feel amazing. Like in Koopa Troopa Beach where it has that iconic shortcut, or in Royal Raceway with its engaging turns and dips, or Bowser's Castle with its brilliant uses of thwomps. But ultimately, DK Jungle Parkway reigns supreme to me because of how it manages to utilize the peculiar physics of the game in a way that benefits the player. But even with all of this, it's not gonna be the Mario Kart game that everyone's gonna vibe with, and I understand that. That's why I got the number of the beast and asked him to cool hell down for a bit so that I can say that this is definitely not my favorite Mario Kart game, as that would be... What do you call a critical blow underwater? A fin-ishing blow! We love bad Fire Emblem puns in this house.